Hi everyone, Susan Storm here, and today we are going to explore the Myers-Briggs personality type of Armin Arlert from Attack on Titan. This is one of my favorite animes, and if you're here, you probably enjoy it too. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Now, I believe that Armin Arlert's personality type is INFJ. I'm going to go ahead and lay out my reasoning for this. Let's get started with why do I think he's an introverted intuitive type? First of all, Armin tends to be very careful and methodical in his reasoning. He's not impulsive or spontaneous. He doesn't just blurt out exactly what he's thinking in the moment. Rather, he takes a lot of time to think things through. This would indicate that he has a preference for introversion. Extroverts tend to think out loud, react more spontaneously, and be far more immediately and directly responsive to the world around them, whereas introverts take more time to think things through before they speak, before they react. There's a buffering time that introverts need before they respond to the world around them. On top of that, Armin Arlert has an eye for the future, for how things are likely to play out, for strategy. And introverted intuition is very much about spotting ripple effects and potential outcomes, narrowing them down, and being able to say, if this happens, then 10 steps later, this next event is likely to happen. And we see Armin doing that throughout the series. We see him consistently anticipating how things are likely to go and then making plans based on that information. Armin is very big picture oriented. Rather than getting caught up in the details of what's happening right now and getting focused on the tactics of what he can do in the moment, he's always looking very big picture. How can he help humanity as a whole? What can he do to change the course of humanity's future, not just for the people of Paradise, but also for the world? Introverted intuition is extremely meta. It's extremely big picture. It's less concerned with the micro details of what's happening in the moment and more concerned with those ripple effects and those big picture implications. At the same time, he has focus when it comes to his strategies. He usually develops one clear plan or agenda.
I know what we have to do.
When Titans are infesting the supply depot, he comes up with a plan for the soldiers to act as bait, while members of the 104th Top 10 would slay the 7 Titans by jumping on them from the rafter. He's good at coming up with one specific plan and following it through. When he's making predictions, it's generally pretty singular, which tells me that he's using introverted intuition rather than extroverted intuition. Extroverted intuition branches out into many different possibilities, whereas introverted intuition does have a more singular focus. Extroverted intuitive types will enjoy bouncing their ideas off of other people, hashing them out loud in real time, reworking them, modifying them. You're seeing the strategy all happening on the outside, whereas introverted intuitive types generally get their agenda or their strategy from within. And throughout the series, you often see Armin pausing, freezing, going into his head, and then being like, okay, here's a plan, rather than talking it out with other people. Hanji is an extroverted intuitive. She's more talkative. She's exploring possibilities, brainstorming, poking things, and seeing what happens. There's a much more external, obvious process to her thinking, whereas Armin tends to have a strategy or an insight that appears after a period of quiet.
の壁ってさ、石のつなぎ目とか何かが剥がれた跡とかなかったからどうやって作ったのか分かんなかったんだけど、巨人の効果の能力で作ったんじゃないかな。兄がああなったように効果の汎用性は高い。
Let's look at how Armin is always putting other people before himself, sometimes to his own detriment. He's very concerned with how people feel, and he will often be willing to sacrifice himself so that his friends can survive. If he believes that he could sacrifice himself for the good of humanity, he will do it. If he feels like he has to sacrifice someone he loves for the good of the whole of humanity, he will do it. He cares so deeply about people, but he often is very critical of himself. And that's something that a lot of INFJs will relate to. The INFJ's auxiliary function is called extroverted feeling. Extroverted feeling is so good at understanding how other people feel, prioritizing their needs, reading other people's emotions, responding to their values, and prioritizing that. When a person has auxiliary extroverted feeling, they also have something called critical parent introverted feeling, and that's the shadow of their extroverted feeling side. INFJs tend to be very supportive and nurturing and affirming people via their extroverted feeling. They can be very critical, dismissive, and belittling to themselves via their introverted feeling critical parent function. INFJs often hold themselves to impossible standards and criticize themselves relentlessly when they fail. And we can see this again and again in Armin's life. When he has got himself burned out, he's been facing battle after battle, and he's exhausted, and he's got to weigh all these possible ramifications and decisions at once, and he explodes at Mikasa in this one vital scene. Afterwards, he cannot stop condemning himself. He condemns himself for not being as good as he believed Erwin would have been in his role.
のことどうするの？わからないよ。それにどうしようもないだろ。ハンジさんと兵長は殺されたかもしれないし、フロックたちが僕らにも銃口を向けるかもしれない。それに兄が復活したかもしれない。もう兵団の指揮系統は機能してない。無秩序だ。そうだ。ヒストリアも危険になるかもしれない。義勇兵やアズマ人、ニコロの立場も危ういことになる。だからもうどうしようもないエレンのことなんか考える余裕はないよ。それくらいわかるだろ。ごめん。エルヴィン団長がこの場にいたらこんな無様に当たり散らしたりしなかったのにね。今答えが出た。生き返るべきだったのは僕じゃなかった。
The same nurturing, supportive, forgiving nature that INFJs have, that they give and provide freely to others, they often do not provide to themselves. They often struggle to see themselves as humans worthy of the same devotion that they give to others. It's almost as if they're blind to themselves as a human. So many times they are super hard on themselves, very harsh, very critical, very demeaning, and unforgiving with themselves in a way that they would never be with another person. So if you're an INFJ and you are relating to this right now, the next time you hear that inner critical voice, that critical parent tearing you down because you're not perfect, think about how you would respond to yourself if you were another person. Would you respond as harshly? Think about that and consider whether that's something you would do. Many times INFJs need a lot of help seeing themselves as a human that they should value, a human that they should nurture, support, and prioritize. Armin pairs extroverted feeling with his intuition. So he sees this big picture view of how things could be, where he wants things to go, his vision for humanity, and he tries to utilize his extroverted feeling to make that happen. One thing that you'll notice about Armin again and again throughout the series is he's always telling people to slow down and wait. He always wants to have a conversation, to talk things out with people, to try to find common ground. He believed that the Eldians and the Marlians could work to understand each other, that they would find a way to cooperate, that they would find a way to reach common ground and consensus. He just feels like they need to gather and discuss their misunderstandings together, that they just need to air it out. If they could just talk it out and see each other in real life and connect as humans, that they could find peace. And this is that idealism of the INFJ. They have a vision of a better future, one that's better for the whole of humanity, and they believe through the power of interpersonal connection and communication that they can really make that happen. People just need to talk. People just need to have a heart-to-heart and see the humanity of each other. And he thoroughly believes in that. But again and again, he finds out that's not true. Or other people do not give him the chance to communicate. They don't believe that they have the time, that they must strike first. INFJs are not only feelers, they also have a thinking process called introverted thinking. And we definitely see this with Armin and his desire for information and knowledge. He's the kid that has this illegal book that talks about the world outside the walls. He wants to know everything there is to know about that. And even though it's against the rules, even though he's branded a heretic, even though he's bullied for having that information, he has to know it. INFJs love information. They love to know and understand how the world works. They tend to be lifelong learners. They tend to be people who read a lot. And Armin is definitely like that. He loves to gather information. Even though he can be very diplomatic and very in touch with people's feelings, he can be very head focused. And sometimes when he's leaning into that logic, he knows he's got to make some tough decisions.
我々がいくら知恵を絞ろうともこの事実だけは動きません
For example, when one of the military police was about to kill Gene and he shot him first, he knew he had to weigh the pros and cons, and for the greater good, he had to make this decision. Yes, he struggled about it afterwards, but he knew he had to make this tough decision. He's able to weigh the pros and cons logically, and he's able to follow this logical course of action, even though it conflicts with his conscience on the inside, because he knows in the grand scheme of things, it is going to make life better for more people. And again, that brings in that macro big picture vision. In order to achieve the grand vision that they have in mind, there have to be sacrifices along the way. And that's something that Armin brings up again and again. He believes that in order to make a difference, he has to be willing to sacrifice something. And in this case of Attack on Titan, he believes sometimes what he needs to sacrifice is his own humanity in the process. It's a really tough pill to swallow.
確信していることがあるんだ何かを変えることのできる人間がいるとすればその人はきっと大事なものを捨てることができる人だ化け物をもしのぐ必要に迫られたのなら人間性をも捨て去ることができる人のことだ何も捨てることができない人には何も変えることはできないだ
Next, let's look at extroverted sensing. This is the inferior function of the INFJ. Armin isn't necessarily the strongest, most tactically proficient fighter. He's the brains of the group. He's the person that comes up with the strategies and the plans, and he's the diplomatic arm of the scouts. He's the person who knows how to communicate with people. In fact, his communication skills saved Aaron's life earlier in the series. But when it comes to hand-to-hand combat and fighting, of course, it's an anime, so in anime, everyone's really pretty good at that. But Armin is not the most proficient fighter of the scouts. One of his driving goals is to be able to see the ocean, the water, to be in communion with nature. And even at the end of the series, when he's talking with a certain character, I don't want to give spoilers away, this character keeps saying to him, the only purpose of humankind is to multiply. The only purpose of humankind is to propagate the species. And so it's kind of a nihilistic view of things. And Armin picks up a leaf and he says, I remember the leaves falling this one day when I was chasing Aaron up the hill. And I remember thinking to myself, maybe I was born to chase Aaron up this hill. And he said he thought these things when he would feed food to animals, or he would read a book while listening to the rain, these simple joys in life. He would think, maybe I was born for this moment. And even though these moments didn't cause me to multiply, to propagate the species, even though they had no big picture impact, they still were very precious to him. And this shows the beauty of extroverted sensing. Even though the moment itself may not mean anything in the grand scheme of things, even though it may not save humanity, it still has meaning, still has beauty. And I loved that Armin married his dominant introverted intuition and his inferior extroverted sensing in that moment. These small, simple, beautiful moments in life, maybe that's the reason I'm here. INFJs, when they're healthy, they do have that big picture perspective. They do have that ability to have insight and see ripple effects and predict future realities. But at the same time, they can see the beauty and significance of nature, of experiences, of connection with people, and they can marry those two sides of themselves together. They can be big picture focused and they can be insightful, but they can also be thoroughly present, aware of the beauty of the now, and take advantage of that and really be in that without constantly kicking that can down the road and thinking, someday later I will enjoy that, or I will experience that, or I will be present then. So that's my take on Armin's personality type. I do believe INFJ is the best fit for him. If you would like to find out more about the Attack on Titan characters, I made a video on Eren Yeager's personality type. I've also written an article about the characters from Attack on Titan, which I will link to in the description. If you'd like to find out more about INFJs, I've written over 1,000 articles about INFJs and other personality types on my website at psychologyjunkie.com. Also, if you are not sure about your personality type and you'd like to get help clarifying that, I do offer type clarification sessions. I would love to work with you one on one to figure out what makes you tick, what gets you excited, what drains you, what stresses you. And then we can get to a clear understanding of your personality type so that you don't have to wonder why you got two different results on a test. If you're looking for coaching related to your type, if you're going through something and you would like some insight about that, or if you'd like to know how your cognitive functions work in more depth and detail and how to apply that information to your life, you can also book a type coaching session with me. As always, the links will be in the description. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please hit like and subscribe. That helps to support me and my channel so that I can keep creating videos like this. So stay tuned, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.